The ugly ducklings learn to run around the ponds. Happily by Lee Kim, Episode 3. Once upon a time, in a quiet meadow full of reeds and wildflowers, there lived a family of ducklings. They were not ordinary ducklings. Their feathers were gray and patchy, their beaks a little too wide, and their wings a little too short. While the yellow ducklings from nearby ponds played in the water and waddled in neat rows, these ducklings often sat at the edge, wondering why they were so different. Animals whispered when they walked past. "Look at those ducklings," a frog would croak. "They don't even swim properly." A young turtle once giggled, "They're ugly. Why don't they just hide?" The ducklings heard it all, and every word made them shrink a little inside. But one thing kept them going. Their kind and wise Mama Duck. "My dear ducklings," she would say gently, "you may look different now, but you are full of light and promise. One day, you will shine." The ducklings tried to believe her, though it wasn't always easy. One bright morning, Mama Duck gathered her ducklings near the biggest pond. "Today," she said, "we're going to try something new. We're going to run." The ducklings blinked in surprise. "Run?" asked the smallest one. "But ducks don't run." Mama Duck chuckled. "Maybe not often, but running can be fun. It helps you grow strong, not just in your legs, but in your heart." And so they began. At first, their steps were awkward. They slipped on mud and tumbled into puddles. One duckling even landed in a patch of dandelions and popped them all in one fluffy fall. They laughed and quacked and tried again. "My dear ducklings," she would say gently, "you may look different now, but you are full of light and promise. One day, you will shine." The ducklings tried to believe her, though it wasn't always easy. One bright morning, Mama Duck gathered her ducklings near the biggest pond. "Today," she said, "we're going to try something new. We're going to run." The ducklings blinked in surprise. "Run?" asked the smallest one. "But ducks don't run." Mama Duck chuckled. "Maybe not often, but running can be fun. It helps you grow strong, not just in your legs, but in your heart." And so they began. At first their steps were awkward. They slipped on mud and tumbled into puddles. One duckling even landed in a patch of dandelions and popped them all in one fluffy foal. They laughed and quacked and tried again. The others agreed. They called it the pond run. Every morning they gathered for the race, each duckling trying their best, giggling when they slipped, helping each other up, and finishing with high flappy fives. Soon, animals from all over the meadow came to join or watch the pond run. Baby rabbits bounced along the sidelines. A shy hedgehog wobbled after them with determination. Even a slow old goose tried one lap and puffed, "Not bad for my age." And there, in the middle of it all, were the ducklings, still gray, still awkward, but beaming with happiness. They didn't worry about their feathers anymore. They didn't hide. They had become the joyful hearts of the pond. Mama Duck watched proudly as her little ones led the way, encouraging others, laughing with friends, and showing the true meaning of beauty. One quiet afternoon, the ducklings sat by the pond and looked at their reflections. "Have you noticed?" said one. "We're changing." Their feathers had softened. A light sheen shimmered in the sunlight. Their necks were longer, their steps more graceful. "Are we becoming swans?" whispered the smallest duckling. Mama Duck smiled gently. "You are becoming exactly who you were always meant to be." The ducklings gasped, not because they were beautiful now, but because they had never needed beauty to feel happy. Running, playing, and making friends had already filled their hearts. That evening, the animals held a celebration. There were leaf crowns, songs, and a special race around the pond. The ducklings ran not for speed, but for joy. Every step reminded them of how far they'd come, from hiding in the grass to leading a happy, welcoming world around the pond. As stars twinkled above, Mama Duck told them, "You learned how to run, yes, but more than that, you learned how to love yourselves and others. That's the happiest race of all." And the ducklings, now almost grown, hugged their mama and knew in their hearts they were never really ugly. They had always been full of joy, courage, and kindness. As days passed, the ducklings continued their happy runs around the ponds. Every morning, the sun would peek over the hills, casting golden light on the sparkling water, and the ducklings would gather at the willow tree, their official starting point. They warmed up by stretching their wings and wiggling their webbed feet. With a loud quack, quack, ready, set, go, they took off around the pond, laughter echoing in their wake. What began as a way to feel better had now become a joyful tradition. The ducklings looked forward to it every day. But soon they realized they weren't the only ones watching. One morning, a tiny, nervous chick waddled over to them. "Can I run, too?" she whispered. "Of course," said the smallest duckling with a warm smile. "Everyone is welcome here." The chick joined them. She couldn't keep up at first. Her legs were so short, and her steps so unsure. But the ducklings ran slower so she could follow. They encouraged her. They cheered for her every time she made it a little further. And after a few days, she was running the whole way, her beak wide with joy. News spread. More animals came: baby hedgehogs, shy mice, sleepy squirrels, even a wobbly-legged lamb. Some couldn't run far, some tripped and fell, some laughed, some cried. But the ducklings remembered how hard it had been for them at the beginning, so they made sure no one felt left out. They formed a team called the Happy Pond Runners. They made signs that said, "Take your time, you're doing great. Every step counts. Smiles are more important than speed." Mama Duck was amazed. "You're not just running anymore," she told them. "You're building something beautiful." And they were. The ponds became full of life. Animals that once stayed in the shadows were now running, hopping, waddling, skipping, or just cheering from the sidelines. The ducklings started planning fun events too, a weekly funny foot race where you had to run sideways, a puddle splash marathon, and even a Feathered Friends Friday, where everyone wore leaf hats and painted their faces with berry juice. The animals laughed so much that they forgot to care about how fast or slow they were. They just ran for joy. One day, a proud mallard duck from the big pond nearby came to visit. His feathers were glossy green, and he had a golden ribbon pinned to his chest. "I'm the fastest runner in the North Meadow," he said, puffing out his chest. "I heard you ducklings used to be, well, ugly. But now you're leading races? Impressive." The ducklings stood quietly for a moment. They remembered the days when even one kind word would have meant everything. They didn't want to be like the animals who once teased them. The tallest duckling stepped forward. "Yes, we used to be called ugly. But we never let that stop us. We found happiness in running. And now we help others do the same." The mallard raised an eyebrow. "But what's the point if you're not trying to win?" The smallest duckling looked up with a twinkle in her eye. "We already won. We learned how to love ourselves, and that's the best prize of all." The mallard blinked, then slowly nodded. "That's actually kind of amazing." And from that day on, even he joined the runs once in a while, no longer focused on speed but on laughter. As seasons changed, the ducklings grew. Their feathers smoothed out. Their bodies became taller and stronger. One day, while resting beside the pond, the smallest duckling noticed something in the water's reflection. "Look at us," he whispered. "We've changed." One by one, the ducklings leaned in. Their dull, patchy feathers had turned white and elegant. Their necks had grown long and curved. Their eyes sparkled with wisdom and kindness. "We're swans now," one said softly. But instead of shouting with surprise or racing to tell others, they just smiled. "Does this mean we stop running?" asked the youngest. "No," said the oldest. "It means we keep going, but now we help even more." So they did. They started Pond School, where younger animals could learn to balance, stretch, and run with joy. They taught games like leap log and race the rain cloud. They shared their story with everyone who came. not to brag, but to show that even those who are called names or feel left out can grow into something wonderful. They created a kindness corner, where animals left kind notes for one another. Some messages said, "You made me smile today. Thanks for waiting for me during the run. I believe in you." The community around the ponds blossomed. It was no longer just a place for ducklings and their friends. It became a safe, magical space for anyone who needed love, support, and joy. And at the heart of it all were the ducklings, once unsure and awkward, now graceful and kind, leading with laughter instead of pride. Sometimes new animals would ask, "Weren't you those ugly ducklings from long ago?" And the swans would answer with a gentle smile, "Yes, we were. But now we are happy runners, and we believe everyone can grow into something beautiful, in their own way." Every morning, the swans still ran. Around the ponds, through the fields, under the rising sun. The trails they created were lined with flowers, footprints, and happy memories. They didn't run to be the best. They ran because it reminded them of how far they had come. They ran because they loved the wind in their feathers and the earth under their feet. They ran because every step they took brought more joy, more hope, and more kindness into the world. And so, the story of the ugly ducklings became a legend, not of sadness or shame, but of growth, courage, community, and endless happiness around the sparkling ponds. As spring melted into summer, the ponds blossomed into color. Water lilies danced on the water's surface, dragonflies zipped through the air, and the meadows echoed with laughter and cheerful quacks. That memory became their strength. Each morning, the swans still gathered by the willow tree. "Let's warm up," called the smallest swan, flapping her wings. Young animals lined up excitedly beside her. Ducklings, goslings, lambs, kittens, chipmunks, even a clumsy baby fox. "Running time!" quacked another swan. And off they went, skipping, hopping, waddling, and flapping joyfully around the ponds. The trails were wider now, covered with soft moss and lined with colorful pebbles. The swans had added wooden bridges, tiny signposts with smiling faces, and little rest benches made from logs. The area around the pond had become a happy, peaceful place for everyone, even those who couldn't run. One gentle turtle named Poco couldn't run fast at all, but the swans made a special turtle trail just for him. Each time he made it to the finish, all the animals cheered and gave him leafy medals. "See," said one swan to the group, "you don't need to be fast. You just need to keep going, with a smile in your heart." More and more animals came every week, even from faraway woods and hills. Some heard the story of the ugly ducklings who became happy swans. Others just came because they had never seen a place where everyone was welcome. One rainy morning, a group of visiting ducklings stood at the edge of the pond, shivering and whispering. Their feathers were messy, and their eyes filled with worry. "They're like how we used to be," said the smallest swan, remembering. Without hesitation, she waddled over and said, "Would you like to join our run?" The new ducklings looked unsure. "But we're not good at running. Everyone laughs at us back home." The swan smiled gently. "Then this is the perfect place for you. We only laugh with each other, never at." So the new ducklings joined in, slowly at first. They slipped, tumbled, and got muddy. But they were cheered on with every step. And by the end of the run, they were laughing too. It was the first time in their lives they felt truly accepted. That night, after the campfire storytelling, one of the new ducklings said softly, "This place is like magic." "It's not magic," said a wise swan. "It's love, practice, and believing that everyone deserves joy, even if they haven't found it yet." As the seasons changed once more, the swans began to write down everything they had learned. They kept journals of funny moments, drew maps of the running trails, and created a book called Happy Ponds, A Guide to Kind Running. They shared stories of kindness, bravery, and transformation, not just their own, but the stories of everyone who found their voice on the trails. One curious raccoon named Remy loved reading those stories. He said, "You should start happy ponds in other places too. Animals everywhere need a place like this." And the swans thought, "Why not?" So they trained other animals to become kind coaches. They taught them how to welcome new runners, how to encourage others, how to make safe trails and organize joyful games. Soon, the message of the happy pond spread to other forests and meadows. In one faraway marsh, a group of awkward geese started their own runs. In a pine forest, some deer created a hill run challenge. Even in the mountains, a bear cub and a goat teamed up to start snowy sprints. The once quiet pond had become the heart of a movement, not about running fast, but about growing happily and helping others. One evening, as the sun set over the glistening water, the original swans gathered by the willow tree. Fireflies blinked in the soft air, and frogs sang lullabies nearby. "Do you remember," said one swan, "how we used to cry because we felt so ugly and unwanted?" "I remember," said another, "and I remember how we ran even when it hurt. We ran, we laughed, and we healed." The youngest swan, now graceful and strong, nodded. "We've come so far, but the most beautiful thing we ever did wasn't growing pretty feathers. It was building a world where no one feels ugly." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the stars reflect in the pond. Then, with a deep breath, the tallest swan said, "Let's keep going, not just around the pond, but around the world." And so, the next chapter began. The swans and their friends carried seeds of kindness to every meadow, marsh, and mountain. They sang songs about self-love, taught others how to build happy spaces, and told the story of the ugly ducklings, not as a tale of sadness, but as a celebration of courage, community, and joy. And wherever they went, little animals listened with wide eyes and open hearts. They saw the swans not just as beautiful creatures, but as gentle leaders who had once been small, unsure, and full of questions, just like them. Back at the original pond, the willow tree stood tall, waving gently in the breeze. New ducklings gathered each morning, learning how to run around the pond happily, just like the ones before them. And so, the legacy lived on, not in the reflection of the water, but in every smile, every step, and every loving quack, quack, ready, set, go. The end of episode 3.